Hi everyone, thank you all for joining. My name is Beizar Aradini. I am a local fiber artist here in Nashville, Tennessee. I want to thank Nashville Public Library for this opportunity and partnering up with them for their Community of Many Faces program. In this video, I'll demonstrate a couple of embroidery techniques, and hopefully by the end of it, we'll have a completed design. Before we begin, I want to share a little bit about myself and what inspires me to create the artwork that I do. So many of my pieces unravel my family's journey and story of being refugees and immigrating to America. Other pieces explore my identity as a Kurdish immigrant and my experience of growing up in the Kurdish diaspora. So embroidery and art essentially became tools for me to storytell and to reconnect with my culture, with my roots. It became a way of traveling back home while being thousands of miles away. So for this specific project, I want to pull something from my culture and use that to inspire the design that I will be creating. And we just celebrated Navruz, which is the Kurdish New Year. This is also celebrated amongst many Southwest Asian cultures. Navruz is a time of renewal. It is to celebrate new beginnings. It is also the spring equinox. So before we begin, I want you to brainstorm and think about maybe cultural symbols or sayings, maybe national flower or a flag, something about your own culture that you appreciate, that you admire, and use that to kind of inspire the design that we will be using. So next up, I will be showing you the materials you will be needing, and we will jump into embroidering. I hope you stick around. So for this workshop, here are some materials you'll be needing. I have linen as my fabric. You can also use canvas or cotton. It's easier with linen just because it has just a little thicker hole, so it's easier to get through the fabric when you're embroidering. You'll need an embroidery hoop. Plastic or wooden embroidery hoop will do. We have embroidery floss, which is different than regular thread because it's a little thicker. Writing utensil. Got some pair of scissors. And embroidery needles, which have a larger little eyelet than a regular needle, so that the thicker thread can get through that. So for this project, I will be taking my linen and opening it up. You always want to have some extra fabric so that you have some outside of the hoop, so you're so you have some space to tie the fabric onto the hoop. I also like using my hoop as a guide, so when I am sketching, I don't go outside of the hoop and I know where my limits of drawing are. So I am just going to completely freeform and make a design that is inspired by Navruz. So once you have your design drawn out and sketched out, you can take the top hoop, so we'll have this go underneath, and then we have the top hoop with the screw. Loosening it and tightening it helps tying the fabric in between both hoops. And so you want to tighten it up so that the fabric is on pretty tight. You don't want it to be loose at all, because if you do have it loose, it'll just collapse on its own while you're trying to sew through the fabric. So that's pretty good. So next up, I will show you how to thread a needle. And like I said before, embroidery floss is thicker than than regular sewing thread. So you do have to separate the pieces. You can use this, but my needle isn't large enough, so I like separating the threads. And it's pretty easy to separate, but I like taking 3 threads at a time and using them. So I will just cut some off. It's a little easier when you prepare your thread, so I'm just gonna go through and do this real quick with all the colors that I'm gonna be using, just so I can have some ready, and then I just have these bunches ready to just pull whenever I want to use the color. So once you have your threads separated, you are ready to thread your needle. So you'll just take your needle and find the eye by the end of the thread, and you'll take that end and find the other end of the thread and double knot it. The reason why you want to double knot it is that when the knot is too small, it will just go right through the fabric. So double knot it. And I'm gonna first start with the word Navruz, and I will teach you how to do a very classic stitch. It's called the running stitch. So you always start from the back end and come up. And with the running stitch, it is just simply creating stitches that are about 1 centimeter long and having a gap between each stitch. So again, just come back through the back side of your hoop. Next stitch, I'm actually going to run out of thread. So what I'm going to do is come back up and go back under, and you want to leave enough thread on the end to be able to tie it. So what I will do is just snip this off, take the 2 ends and just create a double knot. And I will trim this end so that it doesn't get it in the way. And now I'm ready for more yellow. So next I want to start on the flowers, and with the flowers I'll be showing you how to do 2 different kind of stitches. I'm going to first work on the stems of the flowers, and we will be focusing on a back stitch for the stem. So for a back stitch, you will start on the end and come up from the back side of your hoop. You'll move forward for the first stitch. But for every stitch after the first stitch, what you'll do is you'll skip a couple centimeters from the back side and come back up with the gap. And it's called a back stitch because we're going to actually go back into that previous hole that we made. And so we're going to continue doing that. We went forward from the back side, but now we're going to go back into that hole that we made previously. This stitch is really good for straight lines or flower stems to make it seem like the line is all connected. So next up, I will show you how to do the lazy daisy. And the stitch is perfect for little flowers that you want to do. So for the lazy daisy, you want to start in the center of your flower. Come up from the back side, and the trick is to go back down the same hole, but you don't want to pull this thread too tight. You want to keep some loose and keep a loop that kind of creates like a petal. And once you get it small enough but not too small, you're gonna come up with your needle from the back side. And on the edge of my petal where I drew my sketch out. So I am coming in through the center of that loop I created. I'm gonna start pulling, but you don't wanna make it too tight so that we still have that petal form. Just like that. And now what you'll do is you will make a stitch right outside of the petal. So right about there. And what this does is create a little tiny stitch to secure that petal. And we're gonna do the same thing until we have all of our petals. So I'm gonna go back through the center, go back through the same hole, come up from the back side off the end of my petal that I drew and into the center of my loop. You want to pull that, again, not too tight, so we can keep our petal form. And you're going to go just a small stitch right outside of the petal to secure it. lazy daisies. We've done the running stitch, we've done a back stitch, and for the sun we will do a satin stitch. And for that I will use yellow. Your design does not have to be complicated. It could be as simple as you'd like it. This is just a fun exercise to get your mind going and get you familiar with different kind of stitches. There are so many different stitches you can learn. There's also kits on Etsy if you want to do more embroidery and learn how to shade and do more complex shapes. But so for the sun, like I said, we're going to do a satin stitch. And what a satin stitch is essentially you are just going from one side to the other side of your line. So we're coming up from the back side of the hoop and we're going straight across to meet our other pin mark. And you want your stitches to be kind of close. This is a great stitch to fill in larger sections and to cover up or fill in any shape you'd like. So I just had an end come up, and when that happens, you can just simply just snip it off. Gonna go through the rays and just do a freeform line. You can always just follow the lines and just create larger stitches. So there we have it. So there's a couple of stitches that we went through. Got the lazy stitch, satin, the running stitch, and the back stitch. I hope this video was helpful. Like I said, there are many tutorials out there as well if you want to learn more complex stitches. Once you're done with your design, you can remove it from the hoop, or you can even trim the edge, keep enough, and just sew the back together so that's all hidden, or you can even frame it. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.